Hey everybody, Meredith Baker here for On the Map Off the Radar, and I have with me Fernando Espino, who was an undocumented student at Harvard and one of my classmates. With the presidential election around the corner, I thought it would be important to touch on immigration. Fernando's going to give us some insight onto what it was like to be an undocumented student and the challenges he still faces. As some of you may know, there was a 2012 executive order which allows undocumented youth to apply for up to 2 years at a time to be able to stay in the United States. However, this continually needs to be renewed and is actually not a secure pathway to citizenship. So Fernando's going to talk to us a little bit about the challenges he faced and what his hopes for are in terms of the immigration policy in the United States. So Fernando, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
Yeah, no, thank you, Meredith, for having me.
And I wanted to ask you, what was your experience like being an undocumented student at Harvard?
Yeah, so I think being an undocumented student posed its own a few little problems, or sort of different experiences than even just being a Hispanic or an ethnic minority at Harvard, because you're an even smaller group than what people think is there, and the reality is you have to navigate the kind of vastness of opportunities and experiences that Harvard provides for you and decide which ones you can't apply to, which ones are not available to you because of your lack of citizenship, because of your financial need, because of whatever the case may be. And that does in some ways become disheartening, to be limited by something that's very much out of your control. But at the same time, there is a lot to be thankful for, and I was very thankful for a lot of things that I was surprised about, in terms of support, in terms of just awareness that I did encounter at Harvard. What was really nice about Harvard was that upon being accepted the summer before I was supposed to arrive, I got an email from the freshman dean's office where they indicated to me that there was a group on campus called Act on a Dream, a student group which does a lot of advocacy on behalf of undocumented immigrants, and who was the main source of resources, both in terms of academic resources, job resources, scholarship resources for students that were undocumented on campus.
Because they have about a dozen or so each year, I think, right?
Right. And when I went to go talk to them and check them out and even join them for a year or so, you realize that the number of undocumented is, I would say, surprisingly high, but yet it's still small enough that it can be very much forgotten. So there are, on any given year, about 40 undocumented students across all 4 years at the college. And so the reality is we aren't notified in any sort of way. There's no way we can tell to each other, hey, who's undocumented here? There's no way it's just come out and say it, because some people are very comfortable coming out. Some people are very much not. And so go ahead.
Oh, no, and I was going to say, I mean, it's incredible, and the statistics, that there are 1 million undocumented youth under the ages of 18, 65,000 of which complete high school, and then only 7 to 13,000 of which go on to college. So it's incredible to make it that far, given those statistics and all those kind of barriers that are put in the way.
Right. And when you look at it, you can, if you ever get a chance to interview a lot of kids who are, 17, 18 years old, you'll see that there's a permeating sense of sadness, of hopelessness, even, because you've been conditioned to live in a country where you're disallowed a lot of things, and so you don't really expect things like college to be in your grasp, to be something that you can attain, because that's just not. You didn't live to think that was something you could do. And so for the few of us, sadly for the few of us who did end up going to college and graduate, it took a lot of proactive action to really seek out the resources, the people who could help us get us more information. And in my case, it took me I had to trust my high school guidance counselor with,
your immigration status and
right. And trust me, that was an uncomfortable discussion, even though I had talked to her and known her for about a year before that, to just come out and say, hey, this is my situation. And this is sort of the schools I'm hoping to go to. Like, is this something that can happen? And of course, the biggest fear is that she comes and says no, or I don't know, or, or sort of blows you off. But thankfully for me, that wasn't the case. And I think if I hadn't taken that step, I don't know if I would have been in college, much less somewhere like Harvard.
And now that you've graduated, could you tell me some of the stuff or some of the biggest challenges you faced after graduation in searching for a job? Do you feel that the executive order of 2012 has helped you in any way, or what still needs to be done for people like you to have a pathway to legal residency?
Right. So I think what's the most important thing to realize is DACA, the executive order, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, was a very hopeful accomplishment for many of us. Like I said, you get this consistent sense of you don't think that you're allowed to do things, and you don't feel like a lot of things are going to be open to you. And when that came about, I was still in college. I was a sophomore in college, and I didn't quite know yet what was I going to do for college, what I was going to do post graduation. I knew I wanted to work, but at the time I didn't really have that as an option. So DACA, the executive order certainly provided me with that, but what it didn't provide was sort of this educational aspect to it, mostly on the employer side, because since I've applied to a lot of places, there is a very uncomfortable conversation that inevitably happens, whether it's during the interview process or even after you've gotten the job, with human resources or with people at the company, trying to explain what exactly your work authorization is, and how it is different from being an international student who needs sponsorship, or being a person on track to permanent residency or citizenship. And what I've encountered is a lot of people don't quite understand what the difference is, and sometimes it leads to confusion, to questions about whether that still allows me to apply for the job or obtain the job. And in some cases that has closed the door for me. And I've had to stop the application process for a few places. So it even though it opened the door, it isn't, there could still be a better job in explaining that.
Right.
And giving awareness that there are more and more of us who are in this situation, who have now the opportunity to work, and it's not restricted as much as it is thought to be.
And would something like the DREAM Act, which has failed to pass in numerous states, allow you a more concrete path to citizenship than something like DACA?
Well, yes. I think the reasons why we haven't seen the DREAM Act pass is mostly of how it's being painted, how immigration reform in general is being painted on both ends by the media, by current politicians, by political campaigns.
That was my next question, is how do you think it's been obscured in mainstream media? So go right ahead.
Right. So I think the problem is we like to boil things down in when we're during political campaigns to things that are very understandable. And the unfortunate thing is, you hear one of two things when it comes to immigration reform. You hear either just border control or walls related to kind of strengthening our borders, and deportations of people who are already here on the one extreme. And on the other extreme, you hear amnesty. So just complete pardoning, if you will, of people who had immigrated illegally. And I think painted like that, it's very understandable why something hasn't been done. right? Like, no, people aren't as extreme either way, and passions are going to flare up when you post, you sort of posit these things to be that way. So, and the reality is the DREAM Act is not. And the DREAM Act tries to sort of take a middle ground on the reality that that the illegal immigration is not something desirable, but it's something that's taken because of how the system currently is set up for legal immigration. And so to think that immigration is simply a one-dimensional problem of closing borders is naive. And to take a nuanced approach like the DREAM Act to at least help out people who, like me, have been here most of their lives.
Right, who you consider America probably just as much a home as...
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was born in Mexico, but for 20 out of my 22 years, I've lived in America, and it is very distinct to feel American in every way possible without having the actual documentation to say that I could be.
Right, and something like the DREAM Act also is like, if you graduate from college or serve in the Army and you're really contributing to American society in a very tangible way, it seems like in a way it should be a no-brainer that it should pass. But
right, exactly. It should be a no-brainer, and it should feel that it's taking a one step in a multi-step solution to alleviate this problem. But unfortunately, when you think of it as amnesty, if it just is not going to be, it's just not going to be agreed upon.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Fernando, for talking with me. This has been so interesting. And this has been On the Map, Off the Radar. I'll include some links below if you'd like to learn further about this topic. Bye.